Welcome to Moments with Marianne. Now, I want to take a moment before we get started and just have a heart-to-heart. So much is happening in the world right now that's putting us in a place of fear, uncertainty, and unfortunately a greater distance from one another. It's a difficult time for all of us. Let's not let our fears and concerns eclipse our humanity and our ability to show patience and kindness to one another. I think that if this is a time that I left the planet, I'd want to be remembered for showing as much kindness and compassion as possible. I mean, I get it. We're all in a really tough place, but we only rise as a society if we help each other up along the way. So join me in making a point to see if our neighbors need help, if there's anything we can do for the people around us, even if it's just saying hello, being patient with others while we're in long lines together, or checking in with that elderly family member or neighbor to make sure they have all the supplies they need, and if not, helping them pick up the supplies they need, their medication, or helping them find the resources that can better help them. Kindness and compassion does not cost a thing. It takes a moment of our time to reach out to other people and see how we can help. So let's talk about our special guest for today. Her book is one that I've read and reread. Sydney Williams joins us today to talk about her new book, Hiking My Feelings, Stepping into the Healing Power of Nature. Now, she's a former college athlete and competitive skydiver who unexpectedly found herself on the receiving end of a type 2 diabetes diagnosis. While grappling with unresolved trauma from a decades-old sexual assault, she set out on a mission, turning her pain into power. 2 hikes across Catalina Island, and 80 miles later, she found herself hiking my feelings to help others tap into the mind-body connection and healing power of nature that helped kick her self-limiting beliefs and disease into remission. So let's welcome to the show, Sydney Williams.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. Oh my goodness. You know, I saw a post about it. And then as soon as I got the book and started reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We have to talk.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So why don't you share with us, like, what inspired you to go on this great journey? What inspired you to write this book?
Oh boy. So to back things up a little bit, I'll take you back to 2014. That was when the book starts. Chapter 1 starts in 2014, and the book covers like the chronological journey of some of the hardest years of my life and then moving into some of the most beautiful years of my life. So in 2014, my friend Chris, who was a former U.S. intelligence officer for the Army, U.S. Army veteran, committed suicide. And as I'm sure your listeners are probably well aware by now, 20 veterans on average every day do that in this country. So 2014 kicked off with my friend Chris committing suicide. Later that year, my uncle Mike, who had previously beaten brain cancer, had the tumors come back and take his life. Around the same time, I was a competitive skydiver. I was training with my team to go to the Skydiving Nationals, which is like the Olympics for skydiving. And I found out that my teammate had sustained what we thought would be a season-ending injury on one of our training jumps. She injured her knee, and we didn't think she would be recovered in time for the national competition. So the one thing that felt like it was going right in my life at that point, which was skydiving, was not. It just felt like it was ripped out from underneath me. And later that summer, my friend Adam, who went to Idaho for a base jumping trip, died on a base jump and didn't come home from that trip. So I was looking at my bank account, figuring out how we're going to get out to Chicago for his memorial. And around the same time that I was doing that, my coach was like, hey, your teammate's better. We want to go to nationals. And I only had enough money to go to Chicago once. Both events were going to be happening about a month apart. And we were living in Southern California. And I was just like, I can't go to nationals. I need to go to my friend's funeral. So I did that. And when I got back from Adam's memorial, I found out that my skydiving coach, who was also my mentor in the sport, he was the entire reason we moved from Chicago to Southern California, was so I could train at his facility with the intent of becoming a world champion skydiver someday. I found out when I got back from Adam's memorial that my coach was arrested on 6 felony counts for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. So at the end of 2014, I was like, I'm out. I was working as his director of PR events and marketing at the Skydiving Center, where I was also a fully sponsored athlete. And I've seen how this stuff plays out in the media. Like I've watched case after case after case, with sexual assault, especially when minors are involved, and it just wasn't part of my job description to be part of the team that cleans up that mess. If that was going to reflect poorly on the business, I did not get hired to clean up his personal affairs. So I quit with no backup plan, no nothing. I walked away from the sport and retired altogether, walked away from my sponsorships and dream of being a world-class skydiver someday, and was just like, nope. So what led me to reading and writing the book, or what led me to writing the book, was just these two experiences that I had on Catalina Island hiking on the Trans Catalina Trail. For folks that aren't familiar, the Catalina Island is off the coast of Los Angeles, California, and the Trans Catalina Trail is a 38.5-mile trail that goes from tip to tip of the island. It's what hikers call a through hike, where you're going from one point to the next. You don't like make a loop and you don't return to where you started from. So you're covering the entire distance of the island. And in 2016, after 2014, I left that skydiving world, jumped back into corporate marketing, and come 2016 in the winter, we were planning on going to Standing Rock to help protest the water pipeline building. And by the time we started arranging for travel and everything else, the tribes were like, hey, we've got plenty of people up here. Thank you so much for your intent to help us with this protest. This is very important work. And also, we're starting to have a negative impact on the land and the weather's starting to turn. So I had the whole week off between Christmas and New Year's. I was looking for something outdoorsy to do. And I had been hiking here and there since we moved to Southern California in 2011. We had done a couple like overnights in Joshua Tree and done some camping here and there, but I hadn't ever been backpacking before. And my husband, who comes from New Hampshire, has done walkabouts, all over the Presidential Range in the White Mountains, and did some stuff down in Texas as well. He asked if I wanted to go backpacking, and I did. So in 2016, I rolled off the couch after two of the hardest years of my life, eating and drinking everything in sight to numb the pain from losing so many people. In the 4 years that I was skydiving, 23 of my friends died. So in 2016 was the first hike, and I just rolled out there with delusional confidence. Like, I had no training, no skills, no nothing whatsoever. I was in the worst shape of my life. I was 70 pounds heavier than I am today, but I didn't know that I could do it. So I wanted to prove myself wrong. And that first trip was just absolutely life-changing.
Well, I so appreciate your candor and sharing all that. And you go into much greater detail in the book on other things that are going on too. And my goodness, it's interesting. I think a lot of people really can understand, and resonate with your book, because we all go through hardship, and then you were just hit like one thing after another with all these unexpected things. And I think a lot of people are like, I get hit with unexpected things almost on a daily basis. I get it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I've learned throughout this process is like, as we go and I share this story around the country, and I wrote the book, and I'm hosting these hikes and hearing other people's stories these days, it's so abundantly clear that we are all so much more alike than we are different. Like, the worst thing that I've ever survived and the worst thing you've ever survived may be completely different, but it's still the worst day of our lives. And everybody has one that they can think of at least. My trauma is sexual assault, and, living with parents that were well-intentioned, but, had really high expectations and all the things that come with that. And that might not be the case for everybody, but trauma isn't a competition either. Like, if I think one of the things that held me back from starting my healing journey and like really digging into it was this thought that like, oh, well, I've been through some stuff, but it's not as bad as like my parents getting murdered or my house burning down. Like, it was all this, like, it felt seemingly pretty benign. It was a lot of end of life. It was a sexual assault, which was incredibly traumatic, but it just didn't feel like I had it that bad compared to some of the other horror stories I've heard about people have survived. So for the longest time, I didn't feel comfortable claiming the things that I had been through, because I just felt so ashamed that it caused me pain to begin with, because I was like, how could something so, in comparison, pedestrian feel like such a earth rocking moment? And I held myself back from healing because I felt like I didn't want to be complaining about the things that I had been through. And that in and of itself is problematic.
Yeah. I think a lot of people go through that though, especially when sexual assault has happened. A lot of times, especially as, and it's probably the same for men, but, I think for women, it's just, how do you talk about that? How do you express that? But it's this pain that you take with you everywhere.
Yeah. And for me, like when I was assaulted, I was in college. After the assault happened, I woke up, it was happening. It was a colleague from work. So that was part of my processing as well, was like, oh, well, I must have brought it upon myself because I knew who this person was. Like in my mind at 21 years old, I thought if it wasn't with somebody that was a complete stranger in a back alley somewhere with a gun to my head, then it wasn't rape. And that's so not true. Like sexual assault has many different forms. And I, for the longest time, talked myself out of even calling what happened to me assault because I thought because I knew the person that it wasn't. Um, so, yeah, I mean, the sexual assault stuff is so complex and so difficult to talk about. But honestly, hearing other survivors' stories is the only reason that I was able to come around and understand what happened to me. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing my story with anybody who will listen. Because the reality is, 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence in their lifetime before they die. 1 in 6 men will as well. And the latest statistics from RAINN tell us that every 73 seconds, someone's being sexually assaulted in this country. As long as that's happening, I will not shut up. Because,
Well, I'm
like,
glad. Yeah.
as much as we keep this quiet, like a lot of people feel like they say, oh, well, I don't know anybody that's been assaulted, that must not be true. And it's like everybody knows somebody that's been assaulted, but we all just carry this with us for so long and we don't tell anybody. Like for me, I didn't tell anybody for 11 years after it happened. I didn't go to the police, I didn't go to the hospital, I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell the girl whose house it happened at. I just went home, showered, looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, well, I feel like I don't fit the profile of somebody who gets raped. Like girls like us don't get raped. I'm smarter than this. So I'm taking this to the grave. Like I will never tell a soul about what happened to me because there was so much shame around it.
And that's very common, I think, for, survivors of sexual assault is that whole thing. It's like, okay, what do we do? Especially if you're younger. It's like, what do you do with that? And so I really applaud you for, coming forth and really sharing your story because I think it really does open the discussion. I mean, I've had some really close discussions with girlfriends of mine, where we're kind of sitting around and just having just honest discussions of where we're at in our lives. And a lot of times sexual assault comes up and it's happened to more. I think the stats are probably a little low. It feels like, at least with the women I'm working with and know and have friends, it's just like, my goodness, there's somebody that's always affected by that.
Yeah, and of course the statistics that we have are alarming and disturbing and absolutely ridiculous. And that's knowing that most of the sexual assaults in this country aren't reported, because you see what happens when you do report. You get drugged through the mud, you're not believed, people question you, what were you wearing, what were you drinking, who do you know this person? Like there's such an inquisition when somebody has the bravery and the courage to come forward and talk about the most violent thing I believe that can happen to the human body, short of being murdered, is sexual assault. When you finally find the place where you feel comfortable speaking about it, whether that's right after it happened or 10, 20, 50 years down the line, there is so much courage and so much work that goes into even allowing those words to cross your lips, that the fact that the first thing for most folks is to disbelieve a survivor is one of the most harmful things I think about our society today.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I really would. Well, and when you started this journey with your husband and you're doing this hike and you're like, "Hey, I'm just going for it." Where were you at that period of time? Were you just at this point where it's like, "Gosh, I just feel like I need to do this for my soul?"
Yeah, it was a lot of that. I had been doing a lot of body image work leading up to that because I was in the worst shape of my life. I was the biggest I had ever been. But leading up to that hike, I had kind of started to shift my use of social media. I'm 34 years old, so I grew up in the era of like AOL chat rooms in high school, which evolved to Facebook when I was in college. So I'm one of the I feel like I'm like the last generation that had an innocent childhood through high school without the internet and everything just being like abundantly public and up for scrutiny. But for me, at the time, I had started to shift how I use social media to anything that like made me feel bad about myself. I unfollowed it. I started diversifying my newsfeed with different kinds of bodies and different kinds of women, so I could see that there's not just one type of body that's attractive. In fact, we're all so beautiful in so many ways. So leading into that hike, I was really not in a place of hating my body anymore, but really in a place of, I would say, acceptance with what it was. And leading into that hike, when I went shopping for the clothes that I needed for the first one back in 2016, the shopping experience itself was like this little portal for self-love, where I was in the dressing room. And historically, when I go shopping, I say a lot of unkind things about my body, but for whatever reason, in that one dressing room in Encinitas, California, on that one day, when I went to go grab the sizes that I normally wear and they didn't fit, like I couldn't get the pants over my legs, I couldn't get the shirt to snap shut. I wasn't unkind to myself. I just looked at myself in the mirror, like got really close up to the mirror where you like are looking into your soul and like maybe seeking something bigger than yourself. And I was like, girl, how do we get here? Like, I don't recognize this body, but I'm not being unkind to it. And that curiosity really opened up the opportunity for me to just feel what was happening in my body and experience what it means when, like, your yoga instructor says trauma is stored in the hips. Like that first day on that first hike back in 2016, I came to understand what that means, because there were so many memories that were coming up for me as I was like literally dragging my leg up this mountain because I was in the worst shape ever. So I mean, it was just like this whole perfect storm of, the election had just happened. I was just like on fire because of that, and just really wanting to find a way to love myself in a world that wants me to be quiet and small. And that hike was the first step on a trail, literally, and then also of my healing journey in that way.
So, how do you feel that hiking has helped you heal both your mind and body with the trauma?
For me, when I'm out in the backcountry, when I'm on a long hike, it depends on the day. Excuse me. It's usually either like 30 minutes to an hour into it, or some amount of distance, or some amount of like pushing, where my body is just like, I'm done complaining about the fact that I'm like sore or tired, or this week was hard, or whatever. And my mind is clear and my body's just in the zone. And for me, that's when I'm able to do like the real work. I say hiking my feelings is my new healthy coping mechanism that replaced eating and drinking my feelings, which was a result of the trauma that I had survived. For over a decade, my coping mechanisms of choice were Ben and Jerry's for breakfast and a bottle of wine to myself at any given point. So I think the big thing for me when it comes to this first hike and the lessons learned along the way and all of that is just really getting back into myself. And when I'm on a hike, I'm not scrolling through Instagram. When I'm in the backcountry, I don't have internet access, so it's real, like I'm not even listening to music. It's just me, the sounds of nature, the movement of my body. And I can't run from the voices in my head. I can't run from that inner critic that's nagging me about everything. I can't run from past trauma. All I can do is put one foot in front of the other and work through it and face it. And hiking has given me this beautiful container in which I can do that.
So, for those that are thinking about getting out in nature more and going for a hike and trying to, kind of like what you've done, kind of follow your book and kind of get back to where they feel like it's their true self, what suggestions do you have for them?
Well, I think the first thing is to take a look at yourself and where you want to go and why you want to do this. Because for me, this whole thing was never a weight loss journey. It was never about like what my body would look like when I was done. There was a very distinct shift where I went from what does my body look like and what does that say about my worth in society, to what is my body capable of and where can it take me. I think before you even get started hiking is like, what's your mindset and what's your intention for doing this? Because if you go in here thinking like, I'm going to go do one hike and lose 30 pounds, like that's not how it works. So I think like having a clear intention for why you want to spend more time outside and what you're hoping to gain from it is great. And just to be clear that you're not confusing an intention for an expectation. Because if you go in with the expectation that like nature's going to heal you and you don't have to participate, that's not true either. This work is very hard and very difficult. But if you're going just to like spend more time in nature, just grab a pair of good shoes, grab a water bottle and go for a walk. Like there's a really great app called All Trails where if you download it, then you set the location settings, then you can open the app and see where a trail is close to your current like physical location. So if you're brand new and you don't even know where to start on All Trails and like see what's around and then see what you're comfortable with. For me, I started by walking around my neighborhood 30, 45 minutes every day when I was getting back into like the hiking physical fitness side of things. And then once that got to be too easy, and I use easy in air quotes, then I started graduating to local trails. So first things first is like get clear on your intentions for doing it, because like your mindset is a huge part of any endeavor that we take on, whether that's professional, personal, in love, in life, with our kids, with our families, whatever. Intention is huge. So make sure you're clear on what your intention is for the experience that you want to go have, and then just go have it. And if you don't like it, that's fine too. And if you love it, let that guide you, because this, like, we are designed to walk. Like, we are on 2 feet, we stand upright, like our bodies are designed for this. It's what we're naturally good at. And hiking doesn't have to be some big monstrous adventure either. Like, you don't have to go up some 10,000-foot mountain and like do that tomorrow. Like, start small, see how you like it, and go from there.
I think that's great advice. I love using the app All Trails because it does tell you like difficulty, length, so you can really prep and not get yourself into kind of a hot mess. Not really being prepared for a trail, and then it's it's like a black diamond trail or something.
Right. Yeah. I've had a couple of those myself. And just as a word to the wise for the newbies, like, sometimes All Trails lies about the distance, and they never lie by saying it's shorter than it is. It's always longer than what they say. So keep that in mind as well. Always scale down a little bit if you're considering like pushing your distance record or whatever. Like, if you're looking to expand on how far you can go, just keep that in mind too, because those aren't always accurate.
Yeah, I end up taking a
Found that out the
5 mile
hard
hike.
way.
I think we all have using that.
Yeah.
So when you decided initially that you're going to do this hike, why Catalina? Why did you guys choose Catalina?
Well, we were looking for something we could do in Southern California, preferably, so we wouldn't have to like fly somewhere, and something we could do in under a week. I've always, since I found out about long distance hiking, like the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, North Country Trail, some of those longer scenic through hikes. The second I heard about that, and my friend Adam, who passed away on the base jump, was the one that kind of like made me aware of these big trails. The second I heard about it, I was interested. I was like, what is this? Like, you mean you can just go walk around for months on end? But to do that requires a certain level of privilege, to be honest. Like, you have to be able to save up the money to continue to maintain your expenses while you're on the trail. Some of these adventures take 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So you have to be able to acquire the equipment. You have to be able to cover your expenses while you're gone, because unless you're like independently wealthy or sponsored or are doing remote work or something, you're not working while you're in the backcountry walking. So I wanted to find out if I liked doing this before I seriously considered doing something longer, like the Pacific Crest Trail. And the Trans Catalina Trail, I feel, and like I'm saying this as somebody who's never done anything longer than a 38.5-mile trail as a point to point hike, but I feel like it was a really good intro to this idea of through hiking, which is the long distance hiking. Because on Catalina Island, you're never very far from humanity. Like, there's rangers, it's only 38.5 miles. So it's like you're not out in the backcountry days away from other humans like you are in some of the stretches on the PCT. There's running water at every campground, and the campgrounds are designated. You can you can carry all the food that you need with you for the journey. You don't have to worry about sending resupply boxes. So it's a nice way to kind of eliminate the scary things like food resupplies, water accessibility, and taking the time off, and just be like, hey, do I like sleeping on trail? Like, do I enjoy hiking for days on end with no other purpose? Like, it's a nice warm up to see if you're interested in it. And that's ultimately why we chose it, was because we could do it in a week. I had the week off work and it was close.
Well, I love Catalina Island, so I think it's great that you guys have the setup where you can do that kind of trail there. I've never done the trail, so I'm seriously considering that, because I think it's such a great way to deconnect, to get really kind of just disconnect from the world and get back to just being you.
Yeah, and that's well, I'm gonna go ahead and invite you to my retreat then, because like that's one of the things. Like I did the first hike in December 2016. I did the second hike in June of 2018, and then March of this year we're hosting our first retreat on the island where we get to bring people and share some of the trail with them. Like we're not doing the whole thing because not everybody wants to go backpack across an entire island, but we're incorporating all of the things that I have found along my healing journey that have been instrumental in the progress that I've made in such a short time. And that's listening to powerful, positive, inspiring music. So we're partnering with our friends, Kaleo Wassman, who does vocals and guitar for a band called Pepper. They're from Kona in Hawaii, but now they're based in SoCal. And his wife is a yoga instructor and Reiki master. So we're talking like energy healing, music healing, hiking, yoga, delicious, healthy food, like everything that has made my life what it is today. We're offering that to bring people along for just like a little tester long weekend. Like, see if you like it. Do you like backpacking? Do you like hiking? Do you like yoga? Do you like Reiki? Do you like delicious, healthy food? Like, it's a nice little taster to be like, this is what my wellness plan could be. Do I want to do this long term? Because for a weekend, it's a great way to disconnect from our devices and reconnect with ourselves, and in a community setting. And maybe that's something that you want to take home with you to your everyday life too.
Well, I love the fact that you have it. People, I mean, if you're not really sure about like, do I have enough gear or any of that, you actually have comfort camping for them.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, is like one from a physical access standpoint as well. Like a lot of people are comfortable doing mileage, but then you ask them to put 25, 30, 40 pounds of stuff on their back and it's game over. Like they're not in a condition to do that. That was part of my struggle on the first trip that we did, was like, could I handle an 11-mile hike that first day? Yeah, probably. Absolutely. With gear on my back, it was a completely different adventure. So for folks that are physically unable to carry equipment, we offer gear haul included with registration. So we make this more accessible to more types of people. So it's not just like thin fit hikers. It's like the unlikely hiker, like the people that are not what you see picture perfect outdoor industry advertising. It's like all kinds of humans like to hike. So we just want to make sure that this isn't only for the people that look like what you see in advertising as well. So the gear haul helps with that. And like you were saying, like if you don't have the stuff that you need, if you've got like a family tent and a sleeping bag and a duffel bag, that's cool too. They'll take your stuff from campsite to campsite for you if you don't want to carry it on your back. And then for the folks that don't have equipment at all or don't feel like dealing with it, then comfort camping, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is like hike and eat snacks and journal and have a great time. And like they set up your tent for you and they break it down and all you got to do is lay in it. Like it's pretty cushy. It's a really sweet deal we got going on for people that are like not totally sure how they feel about spending time outside.
Well, I think that's a great introduction to that so people can decide whether or not that's a place they want to be. It's like you can, do the hike and focus on that and focus how you're feeling and then kind of almost in a glamping kind of way where you can show up and the camp's all set up and ready to go.
Yeah, because the event is for hiking and healing. So if you don't want to deal with the assembly of things, you don't have to, and you can just really focus on, while you're going across this trail, like what's coming up for me, what am I feeling, what am I experiencing, what are the voices in my head saying, where am I feeling that in my body, and have I felt this before? Because that was a huge part of my healing process too, was just identifying where I feel emotions in my body, what they feel like, and when did I feel this last time, and then just kind of like following the cues that are stored in my body to understand some of the things that I've been through, the things that have impacted how I make decisions, how I do business, how I show up in relationships. All of that is accessible to us if we're willing to listen to our bodies and hear the messages that they have. For me, diabetes was the wake up call. That was my body after the assault being like knocking on the door, like, hey girl, red alarm, let's get it together. We need to talk to you. You are so disconnected from us. Hi, we're still here. And so to be able to put yourself into a physical situation where you're really testing your limits. For me, that's where the voices in my head pop up and my inner critic's like, hey, you don't know how to do this. You aren't good enough to do this. And then I can evaluate where those things come from, because our egos are like real jerks and our inner critics are too. So just being able to like reconnect with myself and hear what my body is trying to teach me and follow that as far as I can, down that little like rabbit hole of feelings and sensations in the body to really approach healing in a way that's not just about, you know, bubble baths and candles. Like it's real work to do this.
Yeah.
But it's some of the most rewarding work I've ever done.
I can imagine. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it sounds really interesting. And I think it's such a great way for people to really get to, just kind of the core of themselves, like you're saying, doing journaling and stuff like that. While you've been doing this process, has there been anyone that's been really unsupportive of you?
Yeah. So my family, I grew up in Kansas, and I preface it with that because like I feel like there's an image of like a Midwestern household where everybody's really tight. For some people that paints a picture of like really conservative values, and I wouldn't say that we were necessarily super conservative. I mean, I told my parents everything, but the one thing I couldn't tell them about was the sexual assault. I didn't want to disappoint them. Like the girls like us don't get raped line was just something I imagined my father saying, like if I had told him in that moment. So when I got off the island the second time in June 2018, the 11 days that followed were some of the hardest days of my life to date. Just that I had made such a huge discovery in being able to connect the dots between the trauma from the sexual assault and how that had manifested in my body and in my mind as panic attacks, type 2 diabetes, and all these other physical and mental symptoms that I was experiencing was all tied to this trauma that I just hadn't ever talked about. So learning how to reintegrate into society after walking across an island with everything you actually need to survive on your back. Like I didn't need my gray couch. I didn't need my Vitamix. I didn't need my KitchenAid mixer. I didn't need all my clothes. Like I had everything I needed. Coming off the trail and like reintegrating into society was tough. Plus I had just discovered like the biggest thing that had ever impacted my life, which was the assault. And on Father's Day, 2018, we did a video chat. My family lives in Florida. My husband and I live in San Diego. And we did a video chat and I just lost it. Like I was just crying. And everybody looked at me like I was a problem to be fixed and my tears were concerning. And they were like, not concerned, like we want you to get the help you need, but like, ew, like, why are you bringing this here? This is not your day. This is not your thing. And so later that summer, I went on a trip with my father and I told him about my assault for the first time. He's a writer, he's a photojournalist. I told him everything. Like we were on this cruise, we were getting ready to go to Norway. So we're in a cabin on a cruise ship. It's like a little pressure cooker. And we're just like, he's treating me like I'm a 16-year-old daughter versus a 33-year-old woman that I've grown into at that point. And I just pulled him aside. I was like, Dad, I really feel like we're kind of just ships passing in the night. I think what's happening is like, I think we need to redefine our relationship dynamic. Like, I will always be your daughter. You will always be my father, and I will always respect you as such. And also, I'm 33, you're 63. What are we doing here? Like, I'm not your 16-year-old daughter that went to a party and like fell down the stairs and ripped the banister off the wall. Like, I am a 33-year-old woman who's handling her life, who's doing really cool things in the world. And I'd like to just kind of like tell you about the process that I went through on the flight over here. I told him about how I wrote about the assault for the first time. As a writer, I thought that would be a connection point. Like, this is something that I'm processing for the first time ever. So I asked him if we could have a conversation where I could just like say everything I wanted to say without his interruptions, because we're both very passionate communicators. We both like to talk over each other because we're just so excited to like contribute to the conversation, generally speaking. But this was getting to be like nasty and conflict oriented. And I was like, hey, could I just have the floor, tell you about the experience I had coming over here, introduce you to the woman I am today, and then you can say your piece and then we can like figure out what this is. And so I told him about how I wrote about the assault. I was looking to connect with my father on that level. This was the first time I had ever spoken to him about the assault that I survived. And at that point, it was 12 years prior. And I was just like, hey, here's my whole life. Here is everything. It was the most intimate conversation I've ever had with another human being, especially with my father. And as soon as I like paused long enough for him to interject, he told me that my story was bullshit and that I better come up with a new one because nobody's buying the one I'm telling. Pardon my language, but it's important that I say it.
No. Yeah, no, it's important to put it that way. Yeah, it's perception. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and so I was just like, okay, clearly, like something I said has like struck a nerve or something's happening here. So I removed myself from the situation. I went to the bathroom, turned on my music, my like positive, happy, inspiring music as loud as I could, hoping that maybe he'd hear the lyrics through the door, or maybe the music itself would like cool his jets a little bit. And I took a shower and like tried to like wash off the disgust that he like threw at me. And then came back out and things seemed to be fine. Like he was curious about some of the things that had happened in his life. And we had a little bit more of a conversation after that. And by the time we got home, everything felt great. Him and my mom had recently downsized from a house to an apartment. They wanted to downsize more because my husband and I are living pretty minimally at that point. We weren't in the van yet, but we were still like pretty minimalist. And then after I started doing the speaking tour, it was just like this avalanche of drama that I had never experienced in this family ever, to the point where I was like, okay, am I crazy? Like I had to like gut check with my husband a lot to make sure that I was like, one, hearing what they were saying without my filters, without my bias, just like understanding what was coming out of their mouths and taking that as their truth, and then figuring out what I want to do with that. Because when I started on my first speaking engagement, I shared this long list on tour about all the things that I was working through on the island, all those negative inner monologue, inner critic, just nasty soundtrack that's on repeat, like the things about my body that I need to fix, the things about my personality, things that people at work had told me, like, you know, if it's not her idea, she'll screw it up or she'll throw it away. You know, all these things like you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're never going to be on the varsity team, blah, blah, blah. Like all these things that I had just been carrying with me. I read this list on tour, and the last line on the list is that when my father said, you know, your story is bullshit, you better come up with a new one because nobody's buying the one you're telling. And between the second to the last line and that line, the first time that I was delivering this talk for people that weren't my friends or in a theater at home, there was a really long pause. And I realized in that moment, like when I was assaulted, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't feel safe to do so. And if I had come home after the assault and told my family everything, if I had sat my dad down and be like, this is what just happened to me, if he had said that my story was BS and that I better come up with a new one because nobody's buying the one I'm telling immediately after the assault, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be on this planet anymore. That might have been the thing that took me off of it, if I'm being completely honest with you. Because at 33 years old, I realized, oh my God, 21-year-old me was smart. She knew she couldn't do it. And this is why. And so like when we talk about survivors and not speaking up or reporting or not reporting, like we all know what we need to do. And there's no right way to do it. There's no one way to do it. And there's no guidebook for how to survive this stuff. So in the aftermath of that, I had posted about this realization, like, oh my God, I realized like, this is what happened. Like younger me knew that I wasn't safe. And I woke up on a Thursday morning before my second talk on that tour. And my mom had sent a screenshot of a post that I had written about this realization I was having. Like, I'm not making judgments about parenting. I'm just like coming to understand why I operate in the world that I do, why I react the way that I did from a trauma response, because I didn't know how much the trauma was informing every aspect of my life. And my mom said, you know, is it possible that you're changing how you tell the story now that you have people that will listen to you? And I was like, whoa,
oh wow,
okay. And then my father said, hi, Sydney. That's you. I don't remember it word for word, but I saved a screenshot of it. It was something along the lines of like, you are making up your childhood. I was there for it. That never happened. And also, as close as I'll get to the conversation we had on the cruise ship, I recorded that conversation. You can move along. So the conversation where I told my dad about my assault for the first time and he told me that my story was BS, he was recording that conversation without my knowledge or consent. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've had some very unsupportive people in my life, specifically the people that I thought would be there, would be my foundation, who had been for most of my life, were not. And in the realization of that and the conversations that followed after that, I established a very hard, firm boundary with my family and said, until you guys are ready to talk about why you've said the things you've said and how they've impacted me and how we can move through this and move forward, until you've healed yourselves, I can no longer be part of this dynamic here, because what's happening is I am starting to censor my truth to make you comfortable, and I'm managing for your feelings, and I cannot continue to live my life that way. I have been doing that since I was a child, and it's no wonder that I'm so good at PR and marketing, because I've been doing PR and marketing for this family my entire life. I've been focusing on the good, spinning the bad, and just completely suppressing everything that ever hurt me, because I wanted to be the best first daughter. And that is not healthy, and I cannot continue to live this way. And unfortunately, I haven't talked to my family in over a year. I hadn't talked to my dad in over a year. We spoke around Christmas, because he wrote a review on Amazon, and I was like, well, there's probably more where that came from, because the review was very manipulative and written. If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, you can read between the lines on the review my father wrote of my book. But it was absolutely gut wrenching to get this confirmation that, like, I knew that I wasn't safe, and I was proud of myself for recognizing that. And also, I had to have a ton of forgiveness and compassion to know that the things that have happened to me are not my fault. Like, the way that they move through the world is not my fault, and I don't have to move through the world the way that they do either. So that unpacked a lot of reactions versus responses. Like, how do I show up in a stressful situation? Okay. Is that how I want to show up in a stressful situation? Like Sydney at her highest self, healed, feeling great, full of compassion and empathy for other human beings. Like, would she say that today? No, she wouldn't. Okay. So I had to unlearn a lot of my default reactions and responses, because they were things that I mimicked, that I observed in my family, that are not healthy or helpful or rooted in empathy or compassion. So I had to unlearn everything. And that's really the story of my book, and why it's so relatable, I think, is because I had to strip away everything I'm not to find out who I am, so I can start to build a life from there.
I think that's so important that you shared that, because a lot of times I think people get into this struggle if their families, ends up being toxic. They're working through life situations, so that they can be their authentic self. If the family's toxic, then it's like, what do you do with that? And I really applaud you. I think it's very brave of you to draw that hard line and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to accept, and this is not what I'm going to accept. And when you can show up and we can, communicate better, then great, because, respect goes both ways.
It sure does. And it took me a long time to learn that, and also not a long time, because I know, like, I'm just so thankful. Like, as much as this has been so hard and so painful and so traumatic in so many different ways, I'm so thankful that I've had the opportunity to come to these realizations and to do this learning and unlearning and experience this growth at this stage of my life, and not when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old. Like, I'm so thankful that this is happening in my 30s and not later down the road, because I still got at least one lifetime, if not two, to show up as Sydney, who I've always wanted to be, but never felt safe enough to be.
Well, good for you. I think you're blazing the trail for many, people out there that are looking at going, you know what? I've had these things happen. I don't feel authentic, and I need to get back to me at some point and work through this, because trauma does color every part of your life, whether you realize it or not.
Every part, like every part. And that was part of the that was part of the realizations I had, was just like all of these moments where I felt so just like not myself, but I couldn't figure out what was happening. It was all rooted in trauma. Like, if I take like a 30,000-foot view of my life post trauma and right up until I started healing, that 11, 12 years in between, like, oh my gosh, like, I thought I was on track to go to med school. I was assaulted in college. I was on track to go to med school. I wanted to be a head and neck surgeon. I was going to go save lives, cut cancer out of people's bodies, like the doctor that saved my mom's life when I was a senior in high school and she had cancer. Like, that was my path. And when I was assaulted the semester after it happened, I was in chemistry 101, and I was failing. And like, I'm one of those people, like, if I wanted to try a little harder, I could have gotten straight A's, but honestly, like, school was boring and a little too easy, if I'm being honest. So, like, I was just so perplexed that I was performing so poorly academically, that I just started berating myself. I was like, girl, if you can't get through Chem 101, who do you think you are to get into higher level science classes, much less get admitted to med school, much less get a surgical residency? Like, this isn't your lane. Pick a new one. And at the time, I was bartending to put myself through college. And I was like, I literally asked one of my regulars, I was like, Jimmy, what am I good at? And I was thinking to myself, like, as he's telling me about his life and his perception of me, I was like, well, I mean, I can upsell vodka and I love telling stories like that. Those are the things I was good at the time. And I was like, well, I guess I'll do PR and marketing. Like, I can sell and I can tell stories. And for the longest time, I thought it was because I was stupid. Like, I thought I was failing out of chem because I was an idiot. And now looking back, it's abundantly clear, like, the trauma was so distracting that I couldn't focus on my studies because I was numbing the pain. I couldn't focus on academics. Like, I was having flashbacks. I was crying a lot. I was unable to process it. I didn't feel supported. I had nobody I felt safe enough telling. So I was just carrying the most horrific, worst day of my life with me every day, front and center, for over a decade. And the way it showed up in my life in other ways, like in questionable relationship choices after the assault, I dated a guy who forgot to mention he was married, and I stayed with him for a little bit after I found out he was, because I was in love with the potential, and I didn't value myself. So I was like, oh, well, he loves me even though this is not the best situation. Like, this guy's giving me the time of day. Let's keep going. And like, at work, I took on tremendous amounts of work. Like, I was a workaholic to the T because I didn't value myself and I wanted to feel valued and part of a team. So I just jumped straight into it and took every assignment I possibly could because I wanted to prove that I had something to offer. And it was just doing all this like reflective journaling and thinking and connecting these dots. Like, it has been painful, yes, but so beautiful to just look back and like pat younger me on the head and be like, one, you're a strong woman. Like, you have been through some stuff, younger Sydney. Holy cow. And also just so much compassion for what I didn't know, and how the trauma had just completely given me this set of blinders where I was just looking through a straw trying to get through life every day compared to the view I have now.
Yeah, it's such a journey getting through that healing, so I really just applaud you for not only doing the journey, have the bravery to do the journey and face all that and go through all the things that you do, but also to be that light for so many other people that are looking to work through that themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I've said it before and I'll say it again, like, with hiking my feelings in particular, I know it's bigger than hiking and I know it's bigger than my story. Like, it's not just sexual assault. We all have trauma. The metaphor that I do my work in is what I call unpacking my trauma pack. So I firmly believe, and this is one of the discoveries I made on the second hike, was I've been walking around through life with this invisible backpack on, and it's full of my trauma. And we call it baggage. There's beautiful illustrations of like backpacks with like all the life things that we all carry. But I realized that I was just like pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down and just like packing this backpack full of my stuff and never dealing with it. And I also realized I was carrying a lot of stuff for other people too, like their fears, their projections, their insecurities that I had internalized as my own. And so in doing this work and unpacking this trauma pack has been so just life changing to have a visual and a metaphor through which I can operate and start to understand this stuff has really, really been a game changer for me in the healing journey.
So I understand that you have quite a big backpacking trip coming up in Chicago this summer.
I do, yeah. So one of our initiatives this year, our big one, is to hike 220 miles around the city of Chicago. We're doing this in partnership with the Outer Belt Alliance, which is an organization led by a wonderful human. His name is Jay, and he's a civil rights attorney and environmental attorney from the south side of Chicago. And he also has found the healing power of nature, and he wanted to bring this to people in his community. He wanted to show that, you can have these kinds of healing experiences in the city where you work, live, and play. When you think of Chicago, you don't think an outdoor destination. But this trail, that it's called the Chicago Outer Belt. The Outer Belt Alliance is the group that founded it and like put it all together. It's 220 miles and it goes around the city of Chicago and the western suburbs. And it's a connection of existing pedestrian walkways, existing trails, and some natural forest preserve space. So we're hiking in Chicago, May 26th to June 14th. It's a 20-day adventure. We're averaging about 10 miles a day. And we're doing it to raise money for the American Diabetes Association and for RAIN, which are two organizations that are near and dear to my heart, that are doing great work in the world, both on behalf of diabetics and assault survivors. So our plan is, and our hope is, and what we're striving for is to just turn this into a big event. One of the great things about hiking around Chicago is that it's very accessible. It's super flat. You can pop out of the office, join us for a few days on trail, bring your colleagues, bring your sister, bring your family, bring your friends. So what Barry and I are doing is we're coordinating stops at different diabetes support groups, sexual assault support groups and organizations, as well as like bookstores, business groups, stuff like that, to share my story with as many people as possible, and then encourage them to join us on the trail. So we're really, really looking forward to just exploring what's possible in an urban environment and celebrating the work of the people in Chicago who are already doing incredible things to make the outdoors more inclusive and more accessible for everybody.
So what's your vision with, for hiking my feelings, and what kind of impact are you looking to make?
Well, as an organization, so last year we went around tour. So at the end of 2018, my husband and I sold everything we owned. We moved into a van so we could keep overhead low, stretch the money that we did have as far as it would stretch, and be mobile. So we could go and I could share my story with as many people as I possibly could and host hikes to encourage people to get off the couch and onto the trail. So 2019, I shared my story with 64 audiences around the US and led 69 hikes around the United States. Just getting people out, getting them thinking about mindful movement, what they've survived, and how that's manifesting in their mind and body, and how the outdoors can help us heal. As we were going around the country, people were like, "Holy crap, hiking's awesome! This is amazing. Where can we do this with you for more than just like this half day that we're doing now? Like, is there a retreat center? Is there a space? Like, what are your plans?" So our goal for 2024 is the date that we're shooting for, and that's fluid, is to open up a retreat center where it's sustainably built, it's minimal impact on the land, it's completely sustainable in that we're off the grid, we're growing our own food, and we're able to welcome people to this place where we can go lead a hike, we can go through all the mindfulness exercises. Dream Retreat Center, when it's fully built out, will be like a bridge between Eastern and Western medicine. So really celebrating food as medicine, energy healing, body work, using spending time outside as the primary healing modality, but also bringing in like traditional talk therapy and other therapy methods as well. So our whole big mission is just like, we are out here trying to improve community health by creating these experiences for people to experience the healing power of nature for themselves. And we do that with education, advocacy, and events.
So you did talk about, we've been chatting about Catalina quite a bit, and that you have that retreat coming up. That why don't you share that again for our listeners so they know how long it lasts and when, where it is and where they can sign up.
Yeah, so our hike and heal retreat on Catalina Island is hosted by myself, my husband Barry, who is a wilderness EMT and has tons of outdoor experience. He was a professional skydiver for 16 years, and he taught people how to save their own lives. Like, he taught you how to skydive by yourself. So a lot of mindset work on our end is what we're bringing to the table, and enthusiasm for the healing power of nature. And then we're partnering with our friends, Melanie and Kaleo Wassman. Melanie is a yoga instructor and Reiki healer, and her husband Kaleo is the lead singer for a band called Pepper and also plays guitar. So they're both from Hawaii. They are both really in tune with body, spirit, how movement can influence just the way that we heal and the way we move through the world. So we start on Friday with a welcome ceremony, which is me sharing my story, why this island is so important to me, the healing that I was able to access here. And we have dinner on the beach. We camp on the beach in Two Harbors. And then we wake up, and Melanie and Kaleo will lead us through a morning yoga flow. And then we go hike. And the hike itself on the first day is about 7 miles. the first 3 miles we're going uphill and it's pretty challenging, but we don't have anything else to do that day. Like, we're taking breaks, we're having snacks, we're talking about what's coming up for us, because while the hike is physically demanding at the start, the biggest part of that is the mental aspect of it. So walking people through that, helping them overcome what their brain is telling them their bodies can't do. And then when we get down into our next campground, then we set up camp. If you're comfort camping, then you don't have to set up. You can just start relaxing immediately. And then we'll have dinner on the beach. We'll do a campfire hot seat session, which is where everybody goes around and shares, if they want to, like what was coming up for them, what are they, they came in with an intention. Are they still aligned to that intention for what this experience will be for them? And while we're doing that, Melanie and Kaleo are facilitating like group Reiki healing around the campfire, which is just energy work, like infusing everybody with as much positive, loving, healthy energy as we can. And then we go to sleep. And we sleep next to the beach and everything's lovely. And then we wake up and we rinse and repeat. So morning yoga, we hike back to town. And then after we have lunch, we'll head back to Avalon, where we'll relax for the afternoon. And then Kaleo's doing a VIP acoustic set for everybody that joined us for this adventure as part of our closing ceremony. So incorporating everything that I've ever cared about as far as healing goes, between, just being mindful of our energy, moving our bodies, eating healthy, delicious food, listening to music that makes you feel good. Like, the music itself makes you feel good and the lyrics are empowering. And then, arming you with the tools you need to take that into your everyday life on and off the trail when you get home.
So, and why don't you share your website with us one more time, Sydney, so people know how to be part of your community?
Yeah. So everything you could possibly want to know about Hiking My Feelings can be found at hikingmyfeelings.com.
It's a pretty easy one to remember, right?
Yeah.
Well, Sydney, yep. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We just applaud your bravery, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Sydney. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, Hiking My Feelings, Stepping into the Healing Power of Nature. Hiking My Feelings is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and select indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just what moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Friday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.